Into the lease farm, and we've had shots fired. The bison has rammed the red truck, and we got people on foot.
There was a famous red truck that was very mobile during the whole operation, and that truck from time to time would go mobile, and we wanted to be able to, that if we ever had the opportunity to get the occupants of the truck and stop the truck, we would do that, whether it was through roadblocks or whether it was through the use of explosives or whatever, using other vehicles to ram, because if any of the vehicles tried to get out, we wanted to arrest the occupants and do it safely so that nobody got hurt. The ERT members in the field were going back to Inspector Kemble, who was further out in the field, saying, the truck is mobile, he's coming our way, what do we do?
And I can't give you anything more right now. We've got planes and helicopters flying over, and it sounds like it's going to hell here. But I'll get back to you as soon as we know a little bit more.
We got the word from the West Cam that the red truck was on the move. There's a mad scramble for us to get in place. And sure enough, it came down there, and I don't think anybody was quite anticipating what happened.
I remember I was up on my knees and I felt the shock wave hit my chest. It was like a thud, and I did not expect the explosion to be that loud, or I'd never experienced anything of that nature before.
I'd never experienced anything like that. There was a column of smoke and dust that was about 100 feet into the air, and that big loud boom. And
we jumped up and ran across the road, at which point there were shots fired. The two occupants of the truck escaped towards the lake.
And I got out to the road just in time to see one of the bad guys darting into the bush. And I called it on the radio, but I think one of the problems was that everybody was walking over each other on the radio. A lot of confusion, and by the time we got to the lake, the bad guys were already in the water and swimming across. Then that's when all hell broke loose. All the bad guys mounted their offensive on our guys. We were really surprised actually at how fast that happened.
We had two men out the back. George Preston saw the two people coming out of the lake, and he hollered to the police, come out with your hands up, and they were walking towards us. As they were walking towards us, we started taking rounds from in behind. Wolverine had come around in behind us and hunkered down in probably one of his dugouts there, and he just started pounding rounds inside.
The thumbnail sketch of the situation was that one of our vehicles was ambushed from behind. So this took them by surprise. They buttoned up their vehicle and put their nose into the fire, because that's the thickest part of the vehicle. Then when that's occurred, they saw the belligerents in the woods and then proceeded forward and basically tried to make an arrest. However, the vehicle ran over a large tree, and a large stump broke the steering component of the vehicle, so the vehicle became immobilized.
That's affirmative.
Which one is disabled?
Black Horse Romeo's disabled.
And he's where?
He's on the Lion, just inside, towards the camp from Echo.
Yeah.
We were sitting inside and we could hear rounds pounding off the vehicle, just rapid fire.
Somebody hitting a piece of metal with a hammer, maybe.
Yeah, only really quickly, and then you'd hear some automatic fire, and then you'd hear a whoomp, whoomp, like somebody had a large caliber weapon pounding it in the side of us. And there was nothing we could do. We couldn't pop out to shoot back until the other guys came to rescue us.
Go on there. Apparently 6 tires have been shot out, and the hydraulics are gone. They believe it's part of the steering linkage, and there's no steering on that bison.
Yes, 10-4. I hope to give them some Black Horse coverage.
Multiple gunshots. That's warning, go ahead. We got multiple gunshots here.
Okay, we're trying to find it. Checkpoint's only up about a mile.
Yeah, we don't want to get you.
Yeah, we didn't go all the way. We turned before.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna go back, Sean.
we could hear what was going on there, that they were saying they were being fired on from all sides, and because they couldn't steer, and they were trapped in there. And finally, we just made the decision to leave and go and give them a hand. We were the closest bison. Well, it was pretty tense, really. It was it was hard to determine how many people were firing in there. They were saying they were under fire from all directions. Once we got into the area, one of our members thought that he had seen an individual in the bush, and so our whole idea at that point was to lay down enough cover fire so that if somebody was thinking of coming up to the disabled bison and throwing a Molotov cocktail or approaching it, then we were going to keep them back. And so we managed to maneuver around in the area, and then the decision was made that we were going to back up to the back of their bison, and they could let the back door down and they would run across into our bison. Well, we did this, and when we were laying down cover fire to enable them to, the back doors went down. Only one individual came across. The other individuals felt that there was too much gunfire coming in and they might get hit, so they didn't want to, so the doors went back up again.
And we later found out, because we asked the fellow that jumped into ours, why didn't they all follow you? And I guess they could see bullets going by, and it was just either too dangerous or too risky. They decided not to. And we know Westcam is out there looking from above, telling us that there's 8 guys dressed in camouflage with weapons in hand coming towards us, approximately 75 meters away. So it's really loud. It's like being inside of a tin can. You can hardly hear anything. Nobody panicked, but they're screaming. You have to, otherwise you won't hear anything. Okay, we were shooting everything we had sporadically at first, but then after a while, because when we stopped, we seemed to hear their fire, which was a little louder than ours. They had different weapons, and it was distinctive. You could even hear it hitting our bison, like metal on metal type of deal.
Alpha 2 from Tango Delta 1, there's more heavy fire from Lakeside Tango area, 4 up. Copy, both vehicles under fire.
From my position where I was, monitoring this on the radio and what was coming down from the air, I now know how generals feel in a war when they say they send their troops in and they're standing back waiting, and they're waiting for the reports of what's going on. I thought, when I was listening to it, that we were having members killed. When we had our ERT members, as we found out later, literally sticking an M16 out of the top of a bison and shooting it, just firing it and emptying their magazines, loading another one, and just to keep them down and away till they could get some help to get out of there. Nobody in the RCMP was ever prepared for that type of an incident. Once in a while we do get into a situation where we have to shoot, and thankfully that doesn't happen very often, but this was something none of us had ever been trained for. Yeah.
Franco Yankee, 2 o'clock position to the other 2 units have bandits laying down on the road on the edge of the bush.
Through it, the interesting concept was just basically the muzzle flash that you're getting when somebody's firing up over top of your head. So you had to watch that when you duck down in order to put a new clip into the M16, is that you're making sure that he had stopped firing, or he knew that you were going to stand back up. Otherwise, it could have been, dastardly consequences. So some guys were just reloading and really couldn't reload fast enough. And if a ricochet came back in, definitely somebody was going to end up getting hurt, and you had to compete with the noise of the gunfire, sound of the dogs barking. It was just basically chaos,
We ran out of ammunition at one time, and luckily for us that the military had a supply in the bison that was the same caliber as our rifles. So we used some of their ammunition. And it took quite a while amongst all the people to determine what we were going to do. The military was in no way interested in leaving that bison there. I think if we could have got the guys out of there and got out of there, we might have done it, but the military didn't want to leave it behind. So eventually what we did, a decision was made that we were going to tow them out of there. And unluckily for our bison, we had the only tow bar there, so they needed some people from our bison to get out and hook it up. So what we did was we lined 2 bisons up on either side of the disabled bison, projecting ahead a little, about half a bison length, and then we backed in to give us some cover, and took the A-frame hitch down, and went out the back of the bison and hooked it up onto the other bison. And unfortunately for us, we didn't realize that there's only one way you can hook this hitch on. And we had it upside down, so we had to turn around and take it all apart, turn it over and hook it up again, and eventually jockey the back of the bison in so we could put a pin in it and tow it out of there.
When they left the bison, they risked their lives out of not only concern for themselves, but for their teammates, and I'm sure they were thinking about their families as well. I don't know if the situation was as grave as we thought it was, but we certainly thought it was the gravest of situations. We were being shot at from all sides, and it's amazing we didn't even shoot one of our own member in this whole firefight. And these guys got out, and they were laying on their bellies on the ground trying to hook up to this thing. I can't begin to imagine what they were thinking while they were trying to fit this thing and realizing it was upside down. And they were looking for a hammer or something to knock the pins out. So I found an axe in there, sent it to them, and it was frustrating. And these guys, again, if they hadn't gone out, that would probably still be there. The bison would still be there with flowers growing out of it, because it's the only reason that we were able to successfully pull that bison out was because of those three guys. So in my book, it was an act of bravery, because they knew exactly what the danger was, and they decided to go anyways.
Fox 2, Black Horse Bravo. Fox 2, Black Horse. Black Horse Bravo here, we're mounted and good to go if you need us.
Fox 2, go ahead. We're moving. I'm going.
Occasionally we'd see movement in the bush, we'd see somebody move along, a shadow. We were being constantly advised from the helicopter or the plane that there were snipers in the woods. We could see rounds striking the vehicle. There's numerous marks all over the rear of the vehicle here where rounds hit. I'd say probably in excess we fired at least 2,000 to 3,000 rounds while taking fire at the same time.
It still feels the same way. It's like, oh, you know, you just get rattled. It's like, how did we ever do that? For hours and hours it went on, you know? The communications were a major problem. We had the helicopter and we also had the plane that could talk over everybody else. We were operating on secure channel a long ways away from where our guys were, so the communications were poor. Like, as operators, we sat back and just jotted down notes. We couldn't get a word in. It was just incredible. I've never experienced anything like that before. Nobody knew what was going on. Everybody get excited and everybody talk at once on the radio. It was like you were standing right next to the shots. You could hear them over the radio because the guys are screaming into their radios, and they were screaming. And we were just glad nobody got really, really hurt.
We got some young guy on the phone, won't tell us who he is, and he asked for Marlowe, Sam, by name. They were saying that they mentioned how they want Clark and that, and we're just avoiding that issue, but they wanted Marlowe, so then we got him on the phone, got the approval. What's going to happen if we put him on? What are you going to give us? The bosses said, yeah, put him on the phone. He's been able to talk to him because he's a spiritual leader of the Sundancers.
Just leave there 15 minutes before dark at least.
Okay, so what time does it get dark?
I'd say
8 o'clock?
I was going to say no latest 8 o'clock. That gives you just over an hour and a half.
Okay.
Okay. You've got to be on your way out at 8.
Okay.
No later than.
So what's the procedure if I could get some people to come out?
Load them in the van.
Load them in. I mean, okay.
And come to here.
Okay,
Leave the weapons.
Okay. Of course. Okay. Here's the camp. Here's the lake. Here's their barricade. I told them that I'm going to walk down the road and into the camp.
Apparently you can drive right to the camp.
You can drive right to the camp.
I can drive right to the camp?
Right to the camp. We're going to phone them and tell them.
Okay, phone them and tell them that I'm going to drive right to them.
They're pretty upset over a bunch of things. They've said that they won't come out, and then in another breath they say that they're scared to come out for reasons that they're saying that there was an unarmed female that was shot. Well, who knows what's happened in there. They won't even tell us the names of the injured, what the extent are. So, and they won't tell their own people that were on the phone. So then Marlo said that he would come in, and they seemed receptive to that. So we ran it by the bosses, and they said, yeah, well, let's try it and see. And he's willing to go. He's got the deadline. He's got to be on his way out of there by 8 o'clock, because that's as dark as we can allow it. And that might be borderline. And all we're hoping for is that if he goes in and says, look, I'm safe, I've came in, I'll show you the safe passage out. If you leave your weapons here and come with us. Come with me, come right out. We're hoping at least he'll get the injured. Maybe there'll be a couple of others that'll tag along. He's going to try and work on them all. There's a couple of hardcores that they're not going to hold out a whole lot of hope, Wolverine being one of them. So we're just in a hold pattern now. We'll see what happens. But and they also have some people from their camp that they can't account for. They don't know where they're at. They've been calling for them. They're getting no responses. They don't know if we've got them. We've told them that we don't have them. So they're suggesting that they're either dead, or we're suggesting that they could be hiding because they're scared shitless. Because not everybody in that camp was armed, and not everybody in that camp was prepared to die for the cause. There's people in there under other agendas. So who knows? We'll see.
You guys understand that outside that camp to talk to guys,
yep.
you know damn well they're going to be on there, in their positions.
Just take the keys.
You let your boys know that I'm out there. Don't engage.
No engage. They've backed right off. Good. You've got our work.
But you remember to be careful when you're out there too. There's still stuff out there.
Just drive straight into the camp and stay in the camp. Okay. You'll be safe. Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna stop at Delta and just check to see if there's any change. We won't let them go past Delta until I hear
A member of the Shuswap Nation liaison team went into the camp tonight at approximately 7 o'clock. He was successful in bringing out 2 occupants.
Marlo, Sam, and Jeanette Armstrong, I think, were there with the purest of intentions. So we saw that as very encouraging. Number one, he was articulate, common sense type of guy, would take direction, and he was on the same page as us, as far as I could see. And we were making progress, and I think that heartened everybody, that finally we were getting some headway here. Very heads-up guy, and was a great assistance. And he was significant from that point to the end.
Okay, I don't know. It'll be probably pretty soon. I think it's going to be done the same way. I'll bring a van in, and I'll be by myself. And when I get halfway across that field or whatever, I'll stop the van and get out so you guys can see me again.
Today, at 10 o'clock in the morning, Marlo Sam, a representative of the Shuswap Nation, returned to the camp at Gustafson Lake to speak to the occupants. As a result, as a show of good faith, he asked the occupants that one person come out with him today. a person did come out with Marlowe Sam. When Marlowe Sam got back to the checkpoint, he had one further demand from the camp. And that demand was, if the occupants heard from a respected chief of the Shuswap Nation with a particular message, that they were prepared to lay down their arms and come out immediately.
Marlo, any idea who they want to say that on CBC?
Is there that big Anton guy that was in
Anton Archie? I don't know. Anton Archie?
Well, Bob, police are saying that a demand has come out of the armed camp that if the native people hear a certain message from a respected chief from the Shuswap Nation, they will lay down their arms and come out. Now, CBC plays a role in this in that the occupants out at the camp can only pick up CBC radio, so this is basically their only link to the outside world. So here now with that message, and with me is Chief Antoine Archie of the Canham Lake Band, who will speak first in Shuswap, then in English to the people in